Hey, I'm glad you're back here today. I have some really good Reddit stories to read for you today. But while I do that, I'm going to go ahead and finish my house up. I've been putting it off for way too long, and it's well overdue to get this house done today. So hopefully we can stay on task, get most of the house done. But let's go ahead and get right into the first story. Okay, so the title of this one goes, I spent the Christmas of my life without my husband, and now he's panicking because he realizes I don't need his toxic family anymore. I, 34 female, am currently 5 months pregnant with our first child. This should be the happiest time of our lives, but instead this Christmas became the catalyst for me realizing how miserable I've been for the last 15 years. The situation started when I first announced my pregnancy. My husband's nephew, a kid who has never been disciplined, walked up to me and punched me hard in the stomach. My sister-in-law shrugged it off, calling it a phase, but as Christmas approached, my mother-in-law called to say the phase was still going on. She told me that since they didn't want any accidents with the baby, I should just stay home this year. I expect my husband to stand up for me, but instead, on December 21st, I walked into our room to find him packing his bags. He saw my face and, completely misinterpreting my expression, said, "Oh, did you want me to stay home too?" I looked at him, the man who was supposed to be my protector, and realized he was already halfway out the door. "No," I said quietly, "you can go." He gave me a sheepish smile and kissed my forehead, and left to spend the holidays with his family while his pregnant wife sat alone in an empty house. A colleague of mine who's an older woman who never had been married and had no family in the area heard I was going to be alone and invited me to spend the holidays with her. I can't even put into words how incredible it was. For 15 years, I have endured my husband's family. I've dealt with a passive-aggressive alcoholic father-in-law with a pretentious mother-in-law who treats me like a second-class citizen. I've sat through countless dinners with a golden child sister-in-law who peaked in high school and married a former jock. For the first time in over a decade, I didn't have to wake up at 7 a.m. because missing a meal is considered disrespectful in their house. I didn't have to listen to rants about how certain minorities are ruining the country, followed by the inevitable, "But don't worry, you're one of the good ones." I didn't have to hear my mother-in-law speculate about whether my baby would have blue eyes as if my darker genes were something to be managed. I didn't have to spend hours cooking exotic food from my home country just so they could wrinkle their noses, sniff it, and call it interesting while barely touching their plates. Most importantly, I didn't have my husband by my side, vibrating with anxiety the whole time. Usually, he spends the whole trip trying to soften the blows and telling me his parents don't really mean it when they insult my culture or my body. I slept in, I ate whatever I want, and I finally felt peace. When my husband got home on the 27th, he was his usual anxious self. He expected to find me red-eyed and miserable, waiting for me to comfort him after my lonely Christmas. Instead, he found me glowing, relaxed, and genuinely happy. It started to make him panic. He started stammering apologies, saying that in hindsight, maybe he should have stayed. But then he immediately followed up with, "But you know they would have been so disappointed if I didn't show up." I just looked at him. I didn't cry or yell. I just frowned slightly at his frantic face and said, "It's fine. I truly had a great time." That's what's terrifying him. He realized that for 15 years, I wasn't staying around for the family. I was staying for him. And now that I've tasted the freedom of not being around them, I finally realized that being lonely is 1,000 times better than being insulted by people who claim to be my relatives. I've been thinking about my colleague. She's alone, but she is so much more fulfilled, at peace, than I have been since the day I got married. My husband can sense the fog has lifted, and he knows that I've realized that I don't need his family, and he's beginning to realize that if he keeps choosing their disappointment over my safety and dignity, I might realize I don't need him either. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it sounds like you guys need to do the big D word, and that D word is get a divorce. Because, yeah, if you realize how much of a good time you had during Christmas without him or his family, I mean, that should tell you something. I know, like, that's not the first route that you should go in, especially with your mind. You shouldn't think, "Oh, yeah, I think it's time for a divorce just because I felt good." But maybe you should spend some more time, by yourself again and see if you truly start feeling more peaceful and more better when you're alone. Because if you do, you need to do what's best for yourself, and you shouldn't be with someone who's holding you back and making you stressed out and anxious all the time. So yeah, I hate to say it, but I think your husband isn't the one for you. and it thinks it's taken 15 years to find that out, but I guess it's better late than never. But anyways, let's go ahead and read the next story. All right, I got a good one picked out here. So the title of this one goes, "My ex is a psychotherapist who weaponized my borderline personality disorder to gaslight me." This one goes, "I'm struggling to process the absolute wreckage of my last relationship. For a long time, I thought I was the problem. I have borderline personality disorder, or BPD, and my ex, a 47-year-old psychotherapist, used the fact to systematically dismantle my reality. Whenever I tried to bring up an issue or hold him accountable for his behavior, he would stonewall me. He told me I was irrational and literally set timers against me, claiming he wouldn't discuss anything during a 72-hour window because of my BPD. He told me to just journal or talk to my own therapist instead of actually resolving our problems. He promised we would do couples counseling, then dodged it every time I actually tried to book a session. Then the cracks in his mask started to show. I reached out to his ex-wife, and what she told me made my blood run cold. He had been extremely abusive to her, and the cycles of abuse were getting tighter and tighter towards the end of their marriage. She believed he was even lying to his own therapist, feeding them a skewed victim version of reality to validate his behavior. Last week, I discovered the final blow. He had been cheating on me with a woman in the US for half of our relationship. She had no idea I existed. When we spoke, she told me she had become terrified of him because he claimed he had astral projected to spy on her and invade her privacy. He was discussing marriage with her at the same time he was proposing to me. I finally decided to stop shrinking myself, and I confronted him, hoping for a calm conversation. Instead, he denied everything, told me he refused to discuss the past, and blocked me. Driven by a mix of BPD-related impulsivity and a deep sense of injustice, I sent him an email. I laid into him and I brought up a conduct disorder diagnosis he had as a teenager and told him I believed it had evolved into narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. I told him that while I had compassion for his childhood trauma, it wasn't an excuse to inflict trauma on others. I ended up apologizing the next day for psychoanalyzing him, but the damage was already done. In my desperation to find anyone who could see the truth, I made a massive mistake. I reached out to his 19-year-old son. His son's brother is already no contact with his father, and I was terrified for the boy. I shared screenshots of the cheatings and message where my ex was playing the victim to a DV survivor in her 20s. The son seemed okay with the conversation at the time, but I realize now how much I overstepped. Now my ex is trying to silence me. He sent me a cease and desist letter through email demanding I stop talking to his son, stop collecting evidence, and stop speaking about him to anyone. I feel deeply ashamed of how I handled things. My traits mean I struggle with rumination and a vindictive streak when I feel injustice has occurred. I relive the anger for hours. I know I've been painting myself as the crazy ex, and he is going to use my BPD to prove it to everyone he knows. But I'm also terrified. This man is a professional counselor. He is supposed to be helping trauma victims, yet he is actively causing trauma in his personal life and preying on vulnerable women half his age. I'm talking to a lawyer tomorrow. I know I messed up by contacting his family, but the frustration of watching an abuser hide behind a professional license is almost more than I can bear. So the top comment on this post is, OP, stop all contact immediately. He is a therapist and he knows exactly how to use the legal system and your mental health diagnosis against you. The cease and desist letter is just a scare tactic, but it's one you need to take seriously. Let your lawyer handle it from here. Yeah, I gotta be truthful and say this is a really tough situation. I honestly don't know exactly how to handle it. I think letting the lawyer do all the work just to make sure your butt's covered and you're, legal under the law, everything's good, is the best way to do it. It's really hard because, there's other victims too involved. It's not just you. But yeah, I would definitely stop contact with him. There's no point in feeding him more and more and more. Definitely cut him off. But man, this is really a tough one. Honestly, I'm really curious to see what you guys think and what you would do in the comments. So go ahead, let me know. All right, let's get into the next story. This one's pretty interesting, and the title of this one goes, I went on a date with my yoga instructor's ex. I think that tells you all you need to know about this story already, but anyways, this one goes, a few years ago, I was at rock bottom. I had just gone through a brutal breakup and started attending a local yoga studio to keep myself from spiraling. The community was incredible, and the instructor, let's just call her Elna, was the heart of it all. She was warm, charismatic, and welcoming. Over time, we moved past the student-teacher dynamic and became genuine friends, texting daily about our lives. At the time, Elena was also navigating the end of a long-term relationship. I had never met her ex, and since Elena was a professional photographer, her Instagram was filled with artistic shots rather than personal ones. I had seen maybe 2 blurry photos of him months prior, but by the time we were close, I couldn't have picked him out of a lineup. The mess started on my 25th birthday. I was drunk, feeling lonely, and mindlessly swiping on Hinge. I matched with a guy who seemed sweet and charming. The problem? It was Elna's ex. I didn't realize it immediately because she always referred to him by a specific nickname, and he was using his formal name on the app. Halfway through our initial chat, a cold realization washed over me. I asked him for his Instagram, and the second the page loaded, my stomach dropped. I panicked. My best friend of 15 years, Sherry, was sleeping over, and I woke her up in a cold sweat. Sherry looked at me and at the phone, and I told her, "You haven't done anything wrong yet. Just tell him you can't meet and don't mention it to Elna." I followed her advice. I messaged him, explained that I knew who his ex was, and said it would be inappropriate to meet. He was surprisingly persistent, saying he still wanted to get to know me, but I unmatched him and deleted the app. I thought that I had dodged a bullet. Fast forward a few months, Sherry and I had moved in together, and I was in a dark place, drinking heavily to cope with the stress. In a moment of total recklessness, I re-downloaded Hinge, and he was the first person in my likes. I had some friends over that night, people who were part of the yoga world. I showed them his profile and explained the situation. They all laughed it off, telling me it was just one drink, you're single, who cares? Fueled by liquid courage and bad advice, I went. We had one drink, and it wasn't even a great date. The guilt hit me before I even finished my cocktail. I told him afterward that I couldn't do this again and cut off all contact. I thought that was the end of it, but I was still wrong. What I didn't know was that Elna and her ex were still very much friends. He went straight to her and told her everything. The retaliation wasn't just a cold shoulder, it was scorched earth campaign. Elna didn't just stop talking to me, she mobilized the entire yoga community. Overnight, I was iced out by dozens of people I considered my support team, but then things took a darker turn. Somehow, Elna got a hold of a private nude photo of me, and for the next several months, my life became a nightmare. I received harassing messages from over 50 different fake numbers, all threatening to leak the photo to my family and clients. She started contacting people in my professional circle, trying to dismantle the business I'd worked so hard to build. The betrayal that hurt the most, though, came from within. One of the girls from the studio, someone I had actually confided in when I matched with this guy, had been the one to encourage me to go on the date. She told me it was fine to my face, then became one of the primary people helping Elna attack me afterward. It's been 2 years, Elna's moved on, she's now in a happy relationship with a woman, and the studio is thriving. Everyone else has forgotten the drama, but I'm still living in the wreckage. I've stopped drinking, I've cut off Sherry because she didn't support me during the harassment, and I'm in intensive therapy. I fully acknowledge that going on that date was a betrayal of friendship. It wasn't a mistake made in a moment of weakness and alcohol, but I don't know how to process the fact that wellness community turned into a digital lynch mob that tried to ruin my life over a single drink with a single man. I learned the hard way that sometimes the people who preach light and love are the ones capable of the most darkness. Oh man, this one's pretty brutal. I can't believe those people in the yoga community would go this far to try to ruin her life. I mean, it is honestly sad. It's really sad that people are like this and try to get revenge in the nastiest, most life-ruining ways possible. But yeah, I mean, this lady was definitely not in the wrong. I mean, yeah, maybe she shouldn't have went on the date, but it is what it is. What they did in retaliation was 10,000 times overblown, and it's just sad that this has happened. Honestly, all I can really say is I hope she recovers. I hope she gets the help that she needs to get back on track in life and keep being positive. Anyways, let's go ahead and dive into the next story. Okay, so this Reddit poster said, "My sister got married 5 days after getting engaged, and I'm not okay." Honestly, I understand why you're not okay. Anyways, this poster said, "I, a 24-year-old female, am a twin. If you know anything about twins, you know the bond is different. When she hurts, I feel it in my chest. And for the last 8 years, my chest has been aching almost constantly because of one person, her now husband, Ethan, who is a 23-year-old male. They have been on and off since we were sophomores in high school. It has never been a stable, healthy romance. It has always been a disaster zone. Ethan was the guy who tried to get with sophomores when we were upperclassmen. He was the guy who would disappear for days and then gaslit her into thinking she was crazy for asking him where he was. The low point came in 2024. Ethan was at a club, red-handed, cheating on her. My sister was destroyed. She was broken. She told the entire family what he did, swore on everything she owned that she was done, and looked me in the eye and said, I finally see him for what he is. I was the one who stayed up until 3 a.m. holding her. I was the one who helped her block his number. When he kept trying to bypass all the blocks to harass her, I was the one who called him and told him to stay the hell away from my sister or he'd have to deal with me. I stood on business for her because she couldn't stand on it for herself. Or so I thought. It turns out while I was being the protective twin and looking like a fool for defending her honor, they never actually stopped talking. She kept things cordial, which is sister code for we were seeing each other behind everyone's back. By the end of last year, she started bringing him around family gatherings again, smiling like he hadn't spent the last decade dragging her through the mud. Then last week, the whirlwind started. Ethan proposed, and 5 days later, literally 5 days later, they were standing in City Hall getting married. The reason? Ethan is leaving for the military boot camp next week, and this wasn't just a marriage built on growth or healing. It was a rushed, impulsive, legal contract signed because he was leaving and they were terrified of being apart without a label. The worst part is that I helped with the proposal. I did it because I love her and I wanted her to feel special, but the entire time I was setting up decorations, I felt sick to my stomach. I've spent years picking up the pieces of her life, and now I'm being asked to help glue them back together in a way that I know won't hold. I'm currently looking at the photos from the ceremony. Everyone in our family is cheering. My parents are acting like this is some beautiful star-crossed lovers story of two people who finally found their way back to each other. I feel like I'm the only person in the room with a memory. I remember the cheating. I remember the sophomores. I remember the nights she told me she hated him. I went from being the one telling her that she deserved better to being the one smiling in the background of her wedding pictures. I feel like a fraud. I feel like my loyalty was weaponized against me. I just have to sit back and watch him leave for the military, knowing their history of long distance usually involves him looking for a replacement the second he gets bored. I love my sister more than anything, but I don't trust Ethan as far as I can throw him. It's eating me alive to pretend to be happy when I'm actually just waiting for the next time I have to pick up all the pieces. All I can do is hope that somehow, miraculously, he's changed, but I've seen this movie before and the ending is always the same. Yeah, I've definitely seen this before too. I mean, I've seen people getting married because one of the other one's going off to the military just for the extra benefits of being married while in the military. So I get it. I've seen it before. This is definitely not uncommon. It just sucks to see as the twin sister that the person that your sister is getting married to is a douche, to say it lightly. But this is definitely a tough situation. At the end of the day, your sister made the choice to say yes, and she will have to pay the consequences as well. So I guess we'll see what happens, but obviously wish her the best, but that's just how life goes. So let's go ahead and look at the next story. Okay, we got a good confession here. The title of this one goes, I got my coworker fired and I don't feel bad one bit. So this poster said, I've been holding this in for months. I can't tell anyone in my actual life because I know exactly how it will sound. To the outside world, I look like the person who destroyed a great guy's career, but they didn't have to live in the shadow he cast. There was this person at my job, I'll call him Mark. Mark was the office celebrity. He He was funny, loud, and always the first to volunteer for the high visibility projects. Managers thought he was a visionary. Customers adored him, and he was one of those people who walks into the room and somehow owns the air in it. But Mark made my life a living hell. It started small. So small that I spent months convincing myself I was just being sensitive. It was little comments about my appearance. Wow, a bold choice of sweater today. Hope you can pull it off. Or he'd laugh if I made a tiny typo in a draft and say loud enough for all the cubicles to hear, "It's okay, you're still learning." I wasn't still learning. I had been at the firm 2 years longer than him. In fact, I was one who trained him. But when we spoke to clients, he'd put a hand on my shoulder and tell them, "Don't mind her, she's our new trainee." He was literally rewriting my professional history in real time. In meetings, the gaslighting was an art form. If I proposed a strategy, he'd interrupt me, wait 3 minutes, and then repeat my exact words, but louder and with more charismatic hand gestures. The bosses would nod at him like he just discovered fire. If I finished a complex data project, he'd somehow volunteer to help me with the presentation, which really meant he'd put his name on the title slide and do all the talking. He was so subtle about it that I knew if I complained, I'd be labeled as the insecure, dramatic girl who couldn't handle a big personality. The turning point was a Tuesday afternoon. I was standing in the hallway, hidden by a corner, when I heard Mark talking to our supervisor. He was using that low, concerned voice he saved for when he wanted to sound like a leader. He told our boss that I was emotionally unstable and probably just not cut out for this high-pressure field. I went home and sat in the dark for 3 hours. I realized he wasn't just being a jerk, he was proactively sabotaging my reputation so that if I ever did speak up, I'd already be the crazy one. That was the night I started my Mark archive. I felt like a conspiracy theorist. I had hidden notes in my phone with dates, times, and quotes. I took screenshots of every passive-aggressive Slack message. The holy grail happened when he accidentally CC'd me on an email meant for a buddy in another department. He called me fragile and said I needed constant babysitting just to hit a deadline. I saved it all. I told myself I'd never use it. I just wanted proof so I could look at it and remind myself that I wasn't the one losing my mind. Then the annual HR workplace culture survey came out. Usually I'd write something vague like team communication could be improved. But this time I opened my archive. I didn't just write a complaint, I handed them a legal case file. I listed specific dates and I attached the email screenshots. I named 3 other coworkers who had been present for his trainee comments. I hit submit and felt like I just pulled the pin on a grenade. A week later, HR called me in. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard that I thought I'd faint. But as soon as I sat down, the HR rep looked at me with a tired expression and said, "You aren't the only one who's come forward, but your documentation is the most thorough we've seen." Apparently, the golden boy had been slipping. He offended a major client with a joke, and 2 other women in the office had filed immoral complaints that were just waiting for a catalyst. A month later, Mark was gone. There was no cake, no good luck card. He didn't even get to say goodbye. He just stopped showing up, and his desk was cleared out by a security guard on a Friday afternoon. When I walked past his empty desk on Monday, I didn't feel guilty at all. I didn't feel sad for his family or his bills. I felt a wave of relief so massive I almost started crying. For the first time in a year, I could walk into a meeting without my stomach being in knots. I could send an email without overanalyzing every word to make sure I didn't sound fragile. Sometimes I wonder if I ruined a man's life because I couldn't take a joke. I wonder if he's struggling to pay rent right now, but then I remember how he tried to steal my voice and my career just to make himself look bigger. I didn't lie about him. I didn't even exaggerate a single word. I just stopped being the person who helped him hide who he really was. And honestly, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. LOL. Yeah, honestly, you have to stand up for yourself in life because 9 times out of 10, more like 10 times out of 10, there's probably no one else that's going to stand up for you. And I'm sure when she did finally stand up for herself, I couldn't imagine that weight that was lifted off of her shoulders. She did what she had to do and she did the right thing. I don't think there's any second guessing that. So I feel really happy that she was able to finally have that relief and could go into work, not having that really rain cloud hanging over her shoulders. So good for her. And yeah, on to the next story. Okay, I actually haven't read this next one yet, but just from the title, I can tell it's going to be a doozy. So the title of this one is, I left my wife of 15 years for my 22-year-old intern, and despite being the villain in everyone's story, I've never been happier. So this poster said, I'm well aware of how I sound. To my former friends, my ex-wife's family, and probably most of you reading this, I am the walking cliche of a midlife crisis. I am the stereotypical villain in a Hollywood rom-com. The cold, successful professional who throws away a decade and a half of his history for a younger model. I'm not proud of the optics, but I'm going to be honest. I don't regret my decision for a single second. My ex-wife and I were together for nearly 15 years. We met in our early 20s, grew up together, and built what I thought was a permanent life in Germany. But if I'm being truthful, the foundation had been cracking for a long time. The intimacy had dwindled to almost nothing, and we had reached the stage of roommate syndrome, where we were living just going through the motions together of a marriage. I didn't plan to leave, but I also wasn't truly living. Everything changed when Katya walked into my firm. I work in a high-pressure law firm, and Katya was there for a short internship as my assistant. She wasn't even supposed to be assigned to me, but on her first day, a colleague fell ill, and the partner shuffled her over to my desk by pure chance. I'll admit, I was struck by her beauty immediately. She had this vibrant, effortless energy that felt like a lightning strike in our stuffy gray office. At first, I kept it strictly professional. I was the senior lawyer. She was the intern. There was a 16-year age gap, and it was supposed to be a non-factor. But the chemistry was undeniable. We worked together perfectly, and within days, the professional wall started to crumble. She was flirty, very flirty. She'd linger at my desk, make prolonged eye contact, and drop subtle teases that I tried my best to ignore. After a lunch together during her first week, I realized I wasn't just attracted to her, I was hooked on the way she made me feel. For the first time in years, I felt seen and alive. During her final week, the tension became almost unbearable. We were working late one evening to finish a filing, and the air in the office was heavy with everything we weren't saying. I stayed so late that night that my wife was furious when I got home. We had a massive, explosive fight. As she was yelling, I realized I was done. I wasn't fighting for my marriage anymore. I was just waiting for the next morning so I could see Katya again. On Katya's penultimate day, we had several moments where we almost crossed the line, but we were interrupted by colleagues or phone calls. On her very last day, we finally stopped fighting it. The experience was on a level I had never encountered. It wasn't just the physical connection, it was the realization that I had been starving for passion for a decade. After she left the firm, I wasn't sure if it was just an office fling, but we stayed in constant contact. I couldn't stop thinking about her. A few weeks later, I had a business trip scheduled. I did something I never thought I was capable of. I invited her to join me. Those 4 days blew my mind. We talked for hours. We laughed. We realized this wasn't just a distraction. It was a new life. The day I got back from that trip, I told my wife I was leaving. I packed my bags and moved out. The fallout was nuclear. Friends took sides, my reputation took a hit, and I became the bad guy in her social circle. Katya and I fought through every obstacle. People said she was just after the lifestyle, or that I was just using her to feel young. They were wrong on both counts. We've been together ever since, and the happiest I've ever felt is something I didn't think existed past the age of 25. I'm not suggesting that every man should go out and blow up his marriage for a younger woman. Marriage is hard, and commitment matters. But don't let the world tell you that a connection like this can't work or that it's always a mistake. Sometimes the villain is just someone who finally decided to stop settling for a life they didn't want. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to say much about this one because, honestly, I don't know what to say. I guess all I can say is good for him, I guess, that he got what he wanted and went out there and made himself happy. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, your happiness revolves around you. You can't force it to revolve around other people. I feel bad for his wife, definitely, but that's just how life goes, I guess. So let's talk about the next story. Oh, also, I wanted to say before we get into the next story, that one that I just read, that Reddit post had 20 comments and 0 upvotes. So I will let you guys be the judge of why that may be. Anyways, the title of this next story is I've stopped nagging my husband and I'm happier. So this one goes, I want to start off by saying this isn't one of those just shut up and take it type of posts. In fact, it's the opposite. I've stopped nagging my husband, and for the first time in years, I can say from the bottom of my heart, I'm genuinely happy. My husband has always told me that I overreact, that I'm too emotional, and that I'm constantly nagging. Our marriage has been a cycle of constant friction. I would beg for effort, he would give none. I would ask him to do his fair share of chores, he would ignore me. I had to remind him to be romantic, to be affectionate, or to simply pick up his own trash. I'll admit that I'm a passionate person. I grew up in a home where we expressed our feelings clearly and loudly. When I'm upset, I'll tell you why and how to fix it. My husband, however, is the emotional stone wall. He says showing emotion is hard for him due to his childhood. I never blamed him for that. I nurtured him. I was the one who carried the emotional weight for our entire family. Then something happened that changed everything. I was 5 weeks pregnant and I lost the baby. As an emotional person, I was devastated. I was sulking, crying, and desperate for comfort. I looked to my husband and there was nothing. No hug, no I'm sorry, no support. He just sat there, detached. In my grief, I stayed up an entire night replaying every instant in our marriage where I truly needed him and he failed to show up. Something clicked. A weight finally shifted. I realized that I was pouring water into a glass that had no bottom. I decided right there and then I shouldn't give if I don't receive. So I stopped everything. I stopped the love, the support, the nurturing, and the physical intimacy. I stopped giving him head rubs and back scratches at night. I stopped telling him he was handsome 100 times a day. Most importantly, I stopped nagging. I stopped asking him to help with the house. I stopped asking him to manage our 1-year-old, and I stopped asking for romance. The change in my mental health was instantaneous. Suddenly, I felt like I had gone from managing 2 toddlers to only managing 1. I have so much more free time. I no longer listen to his rants about his hobbies. I don't give him updates on the baby while he's at work. I greet him with a polite nod instead of an affectionate embrace. I pick up my messes and the baby's messes, but I leave his right where they fell. I feel free, but he's panicking. It's been about a week and he is constantly asking what's wrong. He's checking in on me on every 10 minutes and he's doing all the things I used to beg for. He's trying to be physically intimate, only now I'm the one rejecting him. He asked me multiple times if I've fallen out of love with him, and he's even tried to apologize for the past, telling me he knows he took me for granted and trying to offer the support I begged for decades ago. But the door is already closed. I'm not reciprocating. I'm not forgiving this easily, and I don't know if I'll ever want to go back to how things were. I love that he is finally feeling and carrying the weight that I carried for so long. It makes me feel like a bad person to some, but I don't care. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I know the divorce is a long and difficult process, but it is absolutely on my mind. I'm no longer putting in the work for this relationship to function, and if he wants to save this, the burden is 100% on him. It's a sad reality that I found more comfort in strangers on the internet during my miscarriage than I did the man I married, but at least now I can breathe. Yeah, I feel like the divorce is the only option here because once someone checks out of a relationship, there's really no coming back. And it stinks, once someone gives up, there's really no point of being in that relationship any longer. I mean, if you feel better being away from someone, you have to get out of that relationship. I feel like it's so hard these days to get out of relationships because most people feel stuck with the people that they're with, especially when you have a kid with them. I get that. But, life is short at the end of the day, and you need to prioritize yourself more than other people. Not all the time, obviously. There comes a time in life, but definitely sometimes in life you do. All right, so the next one's a bit of an event. It goes, I've learned that I'm the unbearable guy in my friend group by being excluded from a bachelor party. This poster said, I don't know how to proceed. I feel like the ground has been pulled out from under me, and I'm just free falling. Nobody spoke to me about this. Everyone else in our circle, a group that includes my own biological father, was invited to the bachelor party. I only learned about it by accident when someone slipped up and mentioned a group chat I wasn't in. When I finally confronted the bachelor, his reasons were not the things I ever considered to be friendship ending problems. He claimed I left a mess at his place during our last yearly get-together. He said I asked too many questions, he called me annoying, and said he simply didn't have the emotional capacity to look after me at the party because there were so many other people that were going to be there. He insisted he's been telling me this for a while, but that is a complete lie. I spent the last 48 hours replaying every single interaction from our last trip in my head. During that trip, he definitely treated me like a lesser being. He gave me that stink eye, ignored my jokes, and actively avoided sitting next to me. Afterward, he must have felt guilty because he sent me a message out of the blue saying, "Sorry I was mean to you, buffer overflow, love ya." I took that at face value. I thought he was just stressed or having a bad day and was apologizing for being in a weird headspace. I was hurt at the time, but I let it go because I valued the friendships more than my pride. Well, it turns out it wasn't just a bad mood. It turns out there's something fundamentally wrong with me, and he simply does not want my company. He told me it was a difficult decision to exclude me, but the fact that he never actually sat me down to talk about it before making that choice tells me all I need to know about where I stand. When I pushed for more info, he said everyone else knows how to behave, but I need constant maintenance. He claimed I asked too many questions and needed too much help from others to function in a group. I am spiraling. When I'm a guest, I don't even touch a fridge without asking. I don't smoke indoors without permission. I'm almost too polite because I'm so afraid of overstaying my welcome. I cannot for the life of me think of specific situations where I needed maintenance. I've lost sleep trying to remember a single time I was a burden. I reached out to another friend in the group for advice, hoping for a reality check. He gave me an example of me being annoying by repeatedly asking for a specific song to be played. The thing is, I look forward to this yearly get-together all year long. My one thought leading up to this is, hey, I discovered this song and I want to share it with my brothers. I don't have a lot to give, I'm not the richest or the funniest, so I try to share music I think they'll vibe with. My friend's response was brutal. Why would anyone care what you want to listen to? Just sit there and be quiet. I spoke with my girlfriend at length about this. She tried to be supportive, but she confirmed the thing I feared the most. She said I can be difficult to spend time with if someone isn't used to my personality. Now, I found a new scathing hate for myself. I question every movement I make. I know I'm naturally clumsy and a bit forgetful, and I put so much conscious effort into fixing those traits over the years, but it feels like it was all for nothing. The changes I made were negligible. I hate seeing my face in the mirror because all I see is the annoying guy that no one wants around. I have never been hurt like this by people I considered family. The worst part, the part that makes me want to scream, is the bachelor told me that maybe next time we see each other, I can prove to him that I'm not high maintenance. Prove it? You want me to audition for the right to be in your presence? You want me to perform like a trained animal so you can decide if I'm worthy of a seat at the table? That shouldn't be how friendships work. My mind tells me to tell them all to go to hell, but that would mean losing my entire social support system in one day. And it's clear that if there are sides to be taken, they've already picked his. I feel heartbroken. I feel like I'm not even a person in their eyes, just an inconvenience that they finally decided to delete. I feel betrayed. I feel like a little unimportant, annoying piece of crap. That's the only conclusion I can draw when my best friends decide I'm not worth a weekend of their time. Yeah, to me, it sounds like those people are not your friends. You have no reason to be hanging around people who don't want to be around you. I know it hurts because you've probably been quote unquote friends with them for a while, but there are definitely people out there. There's a group of people out there that will accept you 100% who you are without having to change or put on an act for someone else. So as much as it hurts, I think you need to just cut the ties, cut them clean off, and go out there, try to find a new friend group, do something that interests you or something else, but those people are not your friends. I know that sucks, and that's probably not what you want to hear, but, you can't live your life trying to impress other people just to call them your fake friends. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys would do. It's kind of a tough situation. Okay, we finally got a positive one here. It's just a short one, but it's a good one. This one goes, I'm so proud of my boyfriend. This poster wrote, I'm a 30-year-old female and my boyfriend is a 25-year-old male, and we have been together for 6 years. We met at a comedy club and they were doing an open mic and my boyfriend was so hilarious. I'm a bit of a fitness enthusiast, and my boyfriend was a little overweight when we first got together. We started dating, and my boyfriend had no self-confidence at all. We'd been dating for 3 months when I first got him to join me for a run. That led to us working out together and going for bike rides and jogs together. My boyfriend is so muscular now, and he has such a high self-esteem now. But the most important part is that he loves himself and he is happy with himself now. He tells me I helped him love himself. Honestly, I don't think I can take that credit since all I did was invite him to come for a run with me. And he's still so funny. He makes me belly laugh every day. He's gotten funnier every day since we met. I look at him and I feel so proud of him. He gets all cute and shy whenever I tell him how proud I am of him. I love him so much. I always found him attractive, but my attraction has gone up a lot because he's so much more confident in himself. I am so proud of him. Man, that is one of the best feelings, not only being proud of someone, but having someone be proud of you. And I tell you what, working out and just getting out and being active definitely does make you feel good and make you feel better about yourself. You know, even on the days where you had a bad day, nothing went right, if you got out there and moved your body around and was active, sometimes that's all it takes to turn your day around. So good on them, good on him for changing his life and getting active. I tell you, it definitely does make all the difference coming from experience. Anyways, that is going to be all for this video today. I hope you guys all enjoyed, and make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future stories. I do really enjoy making these videos. There's a lot more coming just like this. So subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss out, and I will see you back here in the next one.